It's after 7, so can we commence, please? Thank you. Before we start, at my first meeting there were quite a few people talking over each other. So if you wouldn't mind, if you need to speak and you've got something to say, just raise your hand. I will call on my wonderful system to my left to keep an eye on who's putting their hand up as well as me. But if you would do that, it'd be much appreciated, thank you. Okay, so public question time, I'm guessing we've got no over there.
No one, unless any of the councillors wish to speak as a member of the public. As you'll have seen referred to later when it comes to declaring interest and so forth, where you have declared an interest on your DPI, you can still speak in public session about any matter.
Okay. As usual, the meeting has been recorded. Is there anybody else who wishes to make a recording of the meeting? Okay. Any items that anybody thinks should be heard in private session? No. Moving on to item 252637, apologies and reasons for absence.
So I emailed out twice about apologies from Councillor Brooke, Councillor Green, Councillor Ryler, Councillor Fenwick, and then 6:30 regarding Councillor Third. Just to say, I may have made a mistake. Both myself and Donna think that Councillor Barnett may have submitted his apologies. If so, I'll email Council afterwards about that, and it can be amended in the draft minutes when they come up to the next meeting. If I can see it.
Sure.
I think I did see an email where Isaac said he had emailed you, but it was about 2 weeks ago, him being ultra prepared in live and the rest of us not. So I'm just...
That might be why I can't find it.
Yes,
It probably is.
Thank you.
So we need to,
Is everybody in agreement that those reasons for absence are okay? Moving on, receipt of written declaration of pecuniary and other interests.
yes, can I thank councillors for getting in their DPIs? They've been received from councillors Barnett, Bain, Bellamy, Blacker, Colling, Davis, Dixon, Firth, Greaves, Green, Holmes, Kirkby, Lyles, Morgan, Osborne, Bransby, Rostron, Ryler, Stewart, Whitelaw and Wilson. And all of those have been shared in an unredacted form by email with councillors. It is the redacted form that will then be posted onto the Holme Parish Council website, and copies will also be shared to the monitoring officer. So they are to note.
Councillor Graves?
From reading out the list, does that mean that some people have not submitted?
There are two that haven't submitted, and neither of those councillors are present tonight. And they weren't present at the annual meeting either, so hence they've not been in to give them in.
Okay.
Just to clarify, they have still got their DPI from when they signed it last year, but they've not updated it.
Thank you.
Can I just
Yes.
ask that I did mention it at the last one, if this, rather than sending them all out to us to tell us to delete, can we just be instructed to look at them online?
You did raise this at F&M, Councillor Holmes, you're quite right. The unredacted one has to be shared before being noted. Now, at any point, you, along with any member of the public, once they're put online, you can look them up, but they can't be posted to the website until they've been noted in the meeting.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, and is that absolutely necessary that we see the unredacted ones?
It is absolutely necessary.
Right,
that-
okay,
yes.
that's just, it just seems, apparently this is not what they do in Kirklees, there's certain people, you don't get sent them all 65 to look at online, do you? That
Well, there will be 69 of them,
69, yeah, that's what I was thinking,
but they're all available to inspect, and we can do that at the start of any meeting if that's what you want to do. But people tend,
I just wanted to make it as easy and efficient as possible, that's all I want to do, and if there's an easier way of doing it,
The issue is they can't be noted until you will have the opportunity to see them. Now that opportunity could be put differently. You could come in and look at the printed copies in here, but that's very time
that's more of an
consuming for
onus
you as
on
well.
us. Okay, right. If we
I
don't feel
am
that that's-
happy to act under the direction of the council as to how you want to do it.
Can I ask Councillor Holmes, what way would you do it? Because at the moment we just read it and delete it.
We do, but I was just thinking for Jen, just to say to us, look at them online. I now understand why we can't look at them online. So we'll leave it at that, you know. Okay, thank you.
You might have had a really genius idea that might have resolved the whole
Just wanted to, yeah.
Okay. Declaration of interest in agenda items and written dispensations.
Yeah, so this ended up being a very long item on your agenda, for which I apologise. I think afterwards it would have possibly been better just to have done a briefing paper overview for all the other documents I sent you. So, this relates back to when you had your meeting on the 24th of March, and an action for me was to secure written dispensations from councillors appointed as HVPC representatives to organisations at the council meeting, the annual one on the 19th of May. So I was expecting to distribute blank written dispensations subsequent to that meeting on the 19th of May, but it became a live matter at the actual meeting, if you remember, because a request was made for a dispensation for an item. So, and that led to further conversation and queries amongst you in terms of, it was raised where the issue about pecuniary interest. Hopefully the guidance that got distributed with this agenda has cleared up any confusion individual councillors may have had. I think clearly you can see it's quite a complex issue just by the amount of guidance you can find about it one way or another. What I would say is I've put together this draft procedure. It's one that's identical to one that lots of councils use. You don't have to have, it is not statutory for you to have a procedure, because of course this is covered in standing orders. It is covered in standing order 13. But if you find it helpful to have that procedure, then that's certainly something that you can decide to vote on and approve. Some of the things I would want to go through the procedure with you is the issue of how much notice you should be given if you are requesting a written dispensation. Wherever possible, a request for a written dispensation should be notified prior to the meeting concerned for the officer to report on. I've resisted specifying a number of days. We haven't got a number of days in Standing Order 13, so I've kind of resisted putting anything in. What I would say is if I don't receive something from people by about noon on Thursday prior to the meeting, it's unlikely to get distributed in time for people to consider, because I tend not to work on Fridays. So if you wanted to contact me to say, look, there's this item on the agenda, I want to have a written dispensation regarding it, then you need to contact me in time so I can get the information out to council members, if that makes sense. It does treat pecuniary, registered and unregistered interest the same. Okay, and that again is in line with Standing Order 13. If the procedure is approved, one of the actions from this meeting will be for me to go ahead and organise those written dispensations for councillors representing the parish council's interest in other organisations for approval prior to the next full council meeting in September. So those were the things I wanted to say about the procedure, if you want to consider that. And that's the first motion that you can consider. And then the rest of the motions for the item are about declaring interest in agenda items today, and also to receive any and to consider any requests for dispensations as appropriate. I've also gone on in the agenda to draw your attention to the following, to a number of general points with regards to declaring interest and requesting written dispensations. Number one, only an individual councillor can decide whether to declare an interest. The clerk or another councillor cannot advise you beyond giving you information. Number two, with regards to deciding whether or not an interest is declarable, and this certainly chimes in with the advice you've got from YLCA as well, if in any doubt, it should be declared. Number three, consideration should be given to the need for transparency and the impact on possible public perception in the decisions that you will be making as to whether an interest is declarable. The non-disclosure of a pecuniary interest is a breach of standards in public life and may be treated as a criminal offence. And there are three lawful reasons why a written dispensation can be requested. The first one is that so many members of the decision-making body have disclosable pecuniary interest that it would impede the transaction of the business. Second one, that the authority considers that a dispensation is in the interest of persons living in the authority's area. And that's clearly where the written dispensations for people who are representing the council's interests on other bodies comes in. And then the third one, it is otherwise appropriate to grant a dispensation. And appropriateness is a key guide in that third reason. There should be an appropriate reason for requesting and granting a dispensation. Now that third reason is potentially very broad. I would suggest that it is not to be interpreted as any reason being appropriate because it is requested. The main reason for written dispensation should still be where a councillor is on a body formally representing the council. Okay, and it also just links in with what I said towards the start of the meeting. If you've got an interest that is declared on your DPI or an interest you declare in a meeting, you can still speak as a member of the public in public session. So it is not the case that you wouldn't have a voice at all. But it is the case that you need to think about whether it's appropriate to request a dispensation. I hope that all makes sense. I'm happy to have a go at answering questions.
Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson.
So basically, if I was, it's not the case anymore, but if my son played for Heckless, he doesn't anymore, and they were applying for a grant to the grants committee, I would have to declare an interest in my DPI, right? If I knew, well, at the beginning of the meeting, if I knew the grant was coming up, I would then have to, if I wanted to speak about it, speak at a public session at the beginning if I'd done a dispensation, but I couldn't vote on it, and I couldn't be in the room when it was voted on. Is that correct? I'm waiting for Jen to answer.
Right, so on your written DPI, what you're saying is you would have declared an interest.
Yes.
Okay. So if you declared an interest, then you take no part
No?
in the discussion, you take no part in the vote.
Right, thank you. Right.
Councillor Wilson.
You've answered the first part of the question. Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. In a need a dispensation as a trustee, so
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. What are the conditions of that dispensation then? So does that mean I wouldn't be able to speak or vote, or?
The dispensation,
It doesn't seem much point being a trustee and coming to a meeting if I can't speak or vote on something.
the dispensation means you can speak and vote, but it will be on the specific dispensation. It might just state that you can speak, it might state that you can speak and vote. That is for the council to consider. So that's the point of having a written dispensation.
So has it got to be done for every meeting where something crops up associated?
The dispensation should have the time span that it covers, which could just be one meeting,
I was thinking
it could
for a
be-
year.
it could be for a year.
Papers prepared June 18th, 2025.
We know you can't read, are you? That's
2025,
ridiculous.
page 209.
So I apologise, I don't know what
2638 receipt of written.
Could have been worse.
Sorry.
So you're recording it?
Oh,
Are
no.
you recording it without saying it?
It's reading the papers.
It's reading it out
reads
loud.
the
Ah.
Felt sorry for him.
The point
Get
is,
rid of this, yeah?
the point is that it is for council to consider all those matters, and it should be clear in the dispensation that's granted.
I could just, it's still not quite clear. At the moment, what we've been doing is, I've been able to speak but not vote. Is that going to be, if this dispensation is for a year, would that be the sort of conditions attached to that for that year? So therefore, I'd be able to speak on issues surrounding this issue, but not take part in any vote. Or does that have to be done on an individual meeting basis?
No, that would be the point of the dispensation, that would cover a period of time and make that clear. The conditions of the dispensation would be considered by the council.
So we could
Yes,
possibly vote as well. If we agree.
indeed.
Right, I've seen a lot of hands go up, so if anybody would like to still house a question, Councillor Whitelaw, then Councillor Dixon.
Okay.
So ideally, you've got an item on the agenda, which is something that you've declared a dispensation about. It's
Declared an
example.
Declared-
And then you, one, would write to you in advance and say, I've declared an interest in this, and this is an item on the agenda, and I want to speak to it, and I want to vote on it. And then it would go to a decision at the council meeting.
Yes,
Is that right?
yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Dixon.
Before long, we've had stuff like this. We've done a vote round to abandon standing orders, just to speak, so we could, other people could speak about things. Are we still able to do that?
Yes, you can always choose to suspend standing orders. I think that the question you've got to ask yourself is, you know, is it appropriate for whatever it is?
Okay, so
Yeah.
we could do that, but then the person would have to leave the room, or after the vote goes on as well, because they still wouldn't be able to vote on it. But they could still discuss it if we did choose to do it that way. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lyles and then Councillor Graves.
Obviously with dispensations, we would have to make sure that they were appropriate and that the community wouldn't see there would be a possible conflict. So it would have to be, when we voted, there would be no grey area. So for example, there was quite a bit of discontent last time we had a discussion about something that was being voted on. Some of us didn't agree that people were allowed to vote. What would we do then?
I'm not quite sure what the question was.
So the question is that when you're agreeing a dispensation, you shouldn't be able to, my understanding is you shouldn't just be able to put a dispensation in and assume that it's going to get passed. The council have to agree if it's appropriate or lawful to agree that dispensation.
They do.
Because if we agree something and I, for example, would not agree and I take it to the, almost like I take it to the monitoring officer and you've broken the law, I personally would carry on that journey until it was charged, because that's just the way I am.
Obviously, if any person thinks that a member has broken the law,
Yeah.
then the person you make your complaint to is the monitoring officer.
Yeah. Right, okay.
Councillor Bruce?
Yeah, I am a little bit worried that the focus is on being fair to the individual councillor, and that is absolutely not what the standards regime is about, nor about what dispensations are about. It's got nothing to do with being fair. It's about it's about operating a system of governance that is absolutely clear. So for the, shall we say, the neutral observer, the member of the public looking in, their trust in governance and the organisations can be maintained. So dispensation should be an absolute exception, and the appropriate test isn't really about whether or not it's fair to that councillor, it's about whether it's fair to the public, how the public would perceive it. So at that last meeting, I think perhaps shall we say, some of the comments that were made that may have guided some people, I thought was completely at odds with the standards regime. It's not for anybody else to decide whether somebody needs to declare or not. It's for the individual councillor. The guidance we've always had is, if in doubt, you declare it and you stand out. It is not about being fair to that individual. So there's plenty of times where we can end up in grey. My take on it is as soon as you enter the grey, you're done. It doesn't matter whether or not you think that there should be an exception to it, or that you can see that it's fair or appropriate. It's about what somebody external would do based upon, if you like, the public knowledge of activities and events. How would that public perception be? And there are times when people do have to stay out where maybe it's not particularly helpful. The dispensations that are given, so for example at Kirklees, the dispensations that are granted are rather obvious ones. So they are mainly around setting council tax, okay, because that's happening to everybody. Some of them are also around if you're representing for the council as well, so you could get a dispensation on that. But for lots of other things, you can't, and it's not. That's the bit that needs to be forefront in people's minds. So they can't ask the clerk, should I, shouldn't I? If they're asking the clerk that question, then the answer's already been given. You're done. If you're not absolutely certain, you're done. And the dispensation shouldn't be granted for that appropriate test is a high test, and it's not about what anybody in this room thinks. It's about if we walked across to the co-op and just collared somebody and said to them, do you think they should be involved? That's the test. And most members of the public, it's not about getting into all that detail, it's just that headline. Just that headline, and for most of the answers to that is, well, clearly not.
Councillor Bruce, anybody else?
Can I just say I completely agree with that statement?
Yeah, I mean, I do as well. What Councillor Bruce has said to me is absolutely correct. And with regards to the dispensations that Kirklees give, it is always council tax, because that affects everybody. And the only other ones I've ever sort of seen is if somebody's on, I don't know, represents Cal, let's say, they'll be given a dispensation so they can speak. Don't know whether they vote though. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I think it just depends on what that dispensation is. But they're the only ones. You don't give dispensations for anything else as such. So that would be, so yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Whitelaw?
My personal view on this one is that there is every reason for offering dispensation when it's about finding out information and being able to make a really informed judgment. So to be able to speak about an organisation that you're involved in. So, for example, there was a case when we were going through grants where I would really have liked to have heard from Andy about the Rotary project for the Santa's sleigh, but I wasn't allowed to hear what that was about, because that was deemed to be out of order. So that's where I'm coming from when I'm asking for dispensation. It's about information, quality of information, enabling you to make judgments.
Just to sort of answer that from my, because I was on the same training thing as Jen was. You can't, if you can speak, if you've declared an interest, you can still speak, providing you're allowing the public to speak. And then you can, so then you can, but you do it as a member of the public rather than a councillor.
Councillor Green?
Okay, so I do get where you're coming from with that specific example. My response to it would be that, especially the standards issue with that is that because somebody's got that vested interest, they may not be giving, they may not be seen to be giving 100% objective, non-prejudicial description. So somebody can quite easily sway a vote by presenting some key facts and not others, which undermines the whole standards bit of not being involved in something where there's too close a link. The answer in that particular case would have been for the grant requester to have sent somebody who could speak and answer to the meeting to speak and answer. So some of it is about planning ahead. It'd be nice for any significant grants if they came, because there's quite often questions, and it should be whoever's filled the forms in, and that wouldn't be one of the, or not to be one of the councillors really, but that's perhaps one of those examples of where I'm talking about. As soon as you start getting into the grey, you might not see the grey, but the grey is there because of that connection, and that's why it says to step out.
So what are we voting on first?
So, part of your papers was a written written procedure, and it's, as I say, it really just reflects Standing Order 13. But if you would like to have a procedure, there's one there for you to consider. Trying to find it.
So that's the dispensation procedure guide for parish council.
That-
is in the pack, yeah.
That's it. It's the one that's in the pack. Just finding it out.
I don't think so. So would anybody like to propose that we implement that procedure? Okay, and a second then? All in favour? All against? Any abstains?
Chair, if I might add, even I've had probably about 6 or 7 different training sessions on standards, and I still find it confusing enough as to when you can. It would be lovely if nationally the standard system was a little bit clearer, a little bit more obvious, but there are the flow charts that help, depending upon whether it's a disposable pecuniary interest, a prejudicial interest, or another interest, that'll take you through what you can and can't do. And for lots of the comments that have been made, I wouldn't be able to tell you whether you could or couldn't speak without looking and working the way through the flow chart, and that's the safest and the best way to do it. And I'm sure those are on now. It might be worth sharing those flow charts if you've got them. If you have already done so, it might be worth highlighting them. I think.
It mentions it on the slides.
Yeah.
If they're not in the pack, I will do it because I thought they were.
It might be worth just sending them separate, because they have a great aid memoir. Not being funny about it, the standards regime just goes on and on and on and on, and you get the idea of it, but it doesn't really give you the yes or no that people kind of need. But the flow chart kind of does.
So from my perspective then, as we move through the next part of the agenda, if you're in any doubt, declare it. If you're questioning it, declare it. Basically.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the next thing then, Chair, is to receive declarations of interest of councillors in agenda items.
Is anybody declare anything? Well, I'm actually going to declare something if that's okay. And I don't know if this is pushing it a little bit far, but the item 252648 about the land charity and what to do with the money. As I'm a trustee of Holme Library, I think I should declare that fact. Purely simply because that's one of the places the money might end up. So I'm not sure I should be voting on saying yes to putting the money there.
That goes right back to the.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you did, but we haven't done
As a
that.
trustee, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe once we get those written dispensations in place, that's different, but at the moment I'm not aware they're there, so.
Well, I think that's doing the same then.
No, we're all on
This is-
for others.
Anybody else? Okay. Receive declaration of interest of officers in agenda items.
Nothing to declare?
To receive written requests for disclosable pecuniary interests.
I've not received any, but I know that Councillor Holmes has been wanting to put a written disclosable pecuniary interest form in, and maybe if she wants to speak to that now.
Well, I think most of the questions have been answered really. I did feel that it is often very appropriate that when somebody has a commitment to something, they are the best person to speak about it and have that knowledgeable information, so I wanted to be able to speak for two things. But I do take your point that it's got to be seen. So I've taken on board the fact that you can speak as a member of the public prior to it. And because it seems to be such a difficult area, I'm happy not to submit my thing, because I think I just cannot bear how much controversy it causes, and I think for it to be, I think there is so much benefit in people being able to speak openly about their interests and commitments to organisations. But I do want us to be seen as being fair to the community. And it was wanting to be fair to the community that was wanting me to be able to speak for certain organisations that I know about. But if it isn't seen that way, then so be it. And I don't feel it's, I think we've taken up enough time with it.
So to consider any request for dispensation as appropriate. No. Okay. Moving on to confirm the minutes of the previous parish council meetings. So first is meetings of the full council. And that was the 19th of May.
That's right. So that needs to be proposed and seconded, Chair.
Opposed? Second. All those in favour? Okay. Minutes of the standing committee meetings.
But before that, there is receiving information from
sorry.
that meeting. So, in terms of number 2, the overview of councillor training, I gave a verbal report in finance and management, which I will write up for the next council meeting. In terms of numbers 1, 2 and 3, so that's updating the board asset registers, producing the overview of councillor training and updating the action plan, they're all waiting for me to have time to give them the attention they require. I just wanted to reassure councillors I've not forgotten about any of those. Congratulations, number 4 to Councillor Isaac Barnett, who's been elected as Vice Chair, Finance and Management Committee, and that also means he will join the Staffing Committee as the Chair of F&M, is already a member of Staffing by virtue of being the preceding Council Chair. And also congratulations to Councillor Chris Green, who has been elected as Vice Chair of the Service Provision Committee for the remainder of 2025-26. And just to say regarding number 6, the whole council code of conduct training, you'll have seen the slides, and it's already been discussed in the earlier item.
Thank you. Moving on then, minutes of the standing committee meetings, to approve the minutes of the finance and management meeting held on the 2nd of June. Opposed? Yeah. Second, Councillor Holmes. All those in favour? Thank you. Moving on to financial matters, council budget 25-26 year to date, including earmarked reserves. Rich, I'm assuming that you're taking over at this point.
So first off, in terms of the budget, obviously we're only 2 months into the year, so I suppose a good thing is that nothing disastrous has happened. We got the first half of the pre-sets in on May the 1st, so that the £223,890 appeared there, and the special expenses grant came with it. The other incomes come in generally fine. There's no problems, particularly on the interest. In terms of expenditure, I'll probably make a few points. Salaries is pretty much on target. Insurance, despite being told that there was going to be a fixed amount for 3 years, it's still gone over budget by £89. So obviously the fixed amount was not quite as fixed as they originally told us. I thought I'd make a brief point about elections, because I was talking to the 2 officers about it. If you remember last year we had that really big elections bill for the Upper Holme Valley seat of Councillor Osborne, and I asked for sort of costings of that against the new mill one, which was only about under 6,000. What they said was the Upper Holme Valley is bigger in terms of population, so the amount of the polling cards cost was higher. They also had 3 polling booths rather than 1 for New Mill. So you were paying for the basic rental cost of three buildings. Plus you were having 3 amounts of staff as well. So you're having, not quite sure the name of the officer, but basically somebody in charge of the polling station, plus people there, getting people's votes. So it was costed out quite clearly that the Upper Holme Valley was a rather unusual case. The 9,000 was a rather unusual amount, and the 6,000 New Mill is likely to be a more reasonable amount. Other points that I thought I'd share with you, I've recoded stuff which moved after case closed down. So obviously moved the communications engagement budget line into council. And I've moved Honley Library and the Civic into F&M, and I've basically moved money to these new accounts essentially. Moving on to the earmark reserves, I know F&M will have seen these, but this is basically what's come from basic resolutions to do with the budget. So basically some big budgets were increased, some were reduced. One that I'd missed, which I had to recreate in the last couple of weeks, was the shopfront design guide. So if you remember last year, the money in the budget from the planning budget wasn't spent, and they resolved to sort of spin it into an earmark reserve, and that was paid this month. And when the invoice came through, I realised I hadn't set up the earmark reserve, so I did that, paid it from the earmark reserve, and there's essentially £90 left in that earmark reserve. That's that. I don't know whether anybody's got any questions about the budget year to date or the earmark reserves.
Rich, it might have gone up because the insurance tax has gone up generally.
Ah, right, okay.
Like insurance policy tax has gone up, mine's gone up.
Right, okay.
So that might go
I mean, it's only gone up by I think it was like £50 over or something, but it was a little bit irritating.
It's just gone up by a couple of percent on business insurance.
It may be as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to scheduled payments.
So the May schedule of payments is just a note. So I don't know if anybody's got anything to ask about that. They've already been paid. So, and then the one for June, I think I'll probably leave it, because the only thing that basically is going to come up is covered by agenda item 252651. So I think I'll just leave that. Leave that until that agenda item is sorted.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. As always, thank you very much. Okay, moving on, the annual governance and accountability return for 24-25.
Okay, so most of this documentary's been through F&M anyway. So part of F&M's resolution was to recommend the paperwork to council pending any sort of amendments needed by the internal auditor's visit. So she came. The internal audit report was pretty good. She basically failed us on one thing, which was on the assets list. The first thing she put us on was I'd not recorded, we bought some bench legs and she wanted me to include that. I mean, they were quite expensive, to be fair. They were nearly 800 quid. So she was insisting that I include that on the list. Then we had a general discussion about other points to do with the fixed assets list, and so we decided to move some stuff, because there was some stuff on the asset list that we're responsible for but we don't own. So I removed war memorials and we closed churchyard to a sort of separate bit called other items of significance. We then had this discussion because a lot of this list was what it was costed at before I started, but we noticed that we hadn't put any value down for our benches or our bus shelters, and so she insisted that we cost those at £1 each. So I've had to add £147 worth of benches, i.e. 147 benches, and £30 for 24 bus shelters, including 6 benches. So that was another thing that she was wanting me to add. And then, because I was playing about with lots of stuff anyway, I thought I'd make it a bit easier to understand in the context of the insurance. So I basically branched together all the specific insurance categories, so they're all together now. So the number orders changed because they're all put in separate categories now. But I think it's more useful in terms of the insurance, money. But then, because of all these additions and amendments, it did mean that the amount of the annual return value in box B down the bottom was different from what was proposed to F&M. So that figure is different, the 5281 34355. So that's basically the change. And because that's changed, it means that the accounting statements, which is number 2, the document 2, box 9 of that has had to change. And then because that's changed, document 5E of the supporting documentation's also changed. I don't think there's anything particularly controversial in any of that. So I would ask that you approve the fixed asset list first and then all of the documentation second. Don't know if anybody's got any questions about any of that.
Okay. So we need to approve the fixed asset list to begin with.
Yep.
Thank you. All in favour? Anybody against? No abstains.
And then, you know, in terms of the approving of the documents of the AGA, as you're aware, you two have to sign the document section 1, and then the chair has to sign section 2.
Do we have to approve it as a council first, though?
Yes.
First, thank you. And second, all in favour? Anybody against before I sign it?
If we wanted to get rid of you, we want to say, oh,
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
So what we're doing basically is I am going to announce that the accounts are available to view tonight, and then they will start being available to view tomorrow. and they will be available to the public for 30 working days until I think it's the 4th of August. Not that anybody has ever come and looked at these accounts in the last 5 years, but they are available.
Every quarter, for 2 years.
It's not quite the same.
Okay, so to approve AR section 2, the accounting statements 24-25 revised. Who's up first and second? Councillor Davis, Councillor Colling, and all those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, so moving on then to approve the AGA annual internal audit report 24-25. Second, all those in favour? Anyone against? Okay. And then AGA section 3, the external auditor's report and certificate for 24-25.
I think I'd just do the whole lot in one
Yeah,
go.
okay. And moving on then, all the supporting documentation, are we approving all of that? Yeah. Anybody against any of it? Okay.
We appreciate you, Rich.
Okay. Moving on, then next item on the agenda, referrals to the monitoring officer.
Yeah, it's just to note that there are no referrals regarding named councillors currently under consideration, but the monitoring officer has told me that she is dealing with a general issue raised with her and expects to conclude this shortly. So that's just a note.
So moving on then, the joint meeting of the Holme Valley Parish Council and Holme First Civic Hall Community Trust.
Okay, so this refers to the meeting that you already know about, but here to note. Monday, 4th of August, 7 till 9 PM at the Civic Hall is the date of the joint meeting of Holme Valley Parish Council and Holme First Civic Hall Community Trust to discuss the vision for the Civic. I know I put out separately, and you've also had in your pack the information from Mosdale Gillett Architects and the outline, the scoping document, if you like, the instruction to carry this out. Whether any councillors want to discuss any further action with regards to the visioning exercise, that might be something you want to discuss. And then there is this further motion that's been put forward by Councillor Whitelaw, which I'm sure she'll want to speak to.
Right now.
Councillor Wilde.
Yeah, this was simply we've got this meeting on the 4th of August, and it seemed to me that that's not the place to have the discussions about what all sorts of possibilities there are and our own thoughts and how things might go. And it's a very open project, for want of a better description. So there's lots and lots of ways it might go. So my suggestion is that we have a pre-meeting, so that people can air their suggestions, their thoughts, their ideas, their questions, all of that before we go to this formal meeting on the 4th. So that's the top and bottom of it really. And the motion then is, A, do you think that's a good idea? But then how do we organise that really?
Have we not discussed this before, or we're going to leave it to the lease?
Working group.
Yeah.
No,
I put it on daily, trust.
We haven't set a date to have a pre-meeting.
Councillor Wilson.
Can I speak on this? Yeah, I'll just say this. Just a couple of three things. If we have a meeting about a meeting, we're not necessarily going to get the same people at the pre-meeting that we get to the August meeting. We also probably won't be in a position to know what the trustees have been doing, because they've been working quite hard behind the scenes to prepare for this. I think there is some duplication of effort, and I would say Lonsdale Gillett are well aware of this, and they're preparing themselves for this very thing, that 23 councillors could be coming and throwing in ideas, and that's what they're prepared to do. So personally, I don't think it's necessary. I think we could end up with a meeting without a meeting and different people in each one.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, Councillor
Yeah.
Whitelaw and then Councillor Holme.
I don't think it's a matter of being concerned really about whether it's the same people. It's about having an opportunity to share ideas before we go to a formal meeting with the architects. It's my view.
I think in exactly the same way that the trustees are preparing for this meeting, that we should be prepared for this meeting. And it's about everybody. We might have 23 different ideas, and I think it's appropriate that we have a space in which we share those ideas before the more formal meeting. We want us to be working with the trustees, so we don't want the trustees to feel they're being attacked by 23 different individual councillors. You know, it's us having an open discussion and sharing, and everybody's got an opportunity to contribute possible ideas, because you might have some brilliant ideas. I have no idea what Joe's thinking about this.
Nobody
or
has any
anybody's
idea
thinking
about
this.
it.
And I think it, exactly, so I think for us to have thought a little bit about it beforehand, and us to have, you know, when we were thinking about the how to spend the land charity money, when, you know, everybody contributed, and it was, some of the ideas were similar, some of them were sort of like very varied, but everybody had contributed to that, and we had a more unified voice, and we want to be working with the trustees, not sort of feeling they're coming under attack at all. We want to be working in partnership with them.
Thank you, Councillor Bellman and then Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Wilson on this. I think it's just going to be absolute chaos. It's meetings for meetings for meetings' sake, it sounds a bit more like. I also think we could alienate the trust if we're not careful. You know, if all of a sudden the trust decided, so you wanna sort of do, you know, you want to take over, you want to do this, you're pushing that, and they said, forget it, we're off. Who's going to pick up and run it? Because and that is my absolute fear, that we are, you know, this meeting's been organised with the, I've got what you call them, that's it, with them, and they are absolutely prepared to listen to 23 councillors. So I don't get what has all sat round discussing it, but just between us, is going to achieve. To be honest, it's just a meeting's sake. So I don't actually support another meeting.
Councillor Bell and then Councillor Blackburn.
I think this depends on how the architects are going to approach that meeting, that other meeting. And I kind of saw it that they were going to facilitate an exploration of a range of different views. And it wouldn't be conclusive, it wouldn't be decisive, but it will start to bring some of those ideas out. And that presumably there then might be a series of meetings, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, but there may be, hopefully, at least further meetings, where we don't go forward to that, you know, in which case, as long as it's that, I feel safe to go into that meeting and just explore those things at that time.
Councillor Blacker?
I'm in favour of an informal meeting, the kind that Councillor Whitelaw's proposing. I don't think it's in any question of mandating anybody or perhaps coming to one conclusion. And in terms of it would be pointless to all sit round and discuss. Absolutely agree with Johnny about that. But we could have a kind of structured way of exploring the issues, and we can learn from each other, and it would give us time in our you know, reasonably busy lives, to just get together and think about this issue and you know, perhaps extend our own ideas, find out what other people are thinking. So we come to the first meeting with the architects having already thought about this to some extent. I don't think there's any question of, well, certainly not in my mind, of mandating anybody or coming to one single view. It's just to give people an opportunity to just sit and talk about the issues and what might be possible. And some of us may have spent time looking at what other parish councils, similar groups are doing in the same situation with the buildings. So that's my view.
Councillor Dixon?
I think like the whole point of doing like a visionary document or something like this is for these guys to go out there and think of ideas and come back to us about it with ideas and suggestions. And in some ways, if we are to put something across to them beforehand, it may change their views about how we want to do it. But at the same time as well, I also think it's important that they do have some kind of scope. So they have an idea of what we want to get out of the building and what we want it to be for and for the future of the people of the valley. And that might be something that this meeting that Sarah suggested is. We suggest them like ideas of what we want the civic hall to do, how we want it to be in the future and how we want it to work, rather than just say to them, go ahead, do this, do that, or we've got all these different ideas. I'd like to think like what Lauren said, they will come back to us and the public can ask for the public's ideas as well, suggestions about things as they go along with it, but at the same time as well, that you don't want to try and push them in a certain way, but at the same time as well, we're spending a lot of money on getting this vision done. And we don't want it to be a vision which is not what we want it to be for the civic hall in the future. So I think having that meeting and coming up with some kind of scope and giving them some broad guidelines or broad ideas to what we're wanting, I think that would be useful.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Davis, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but I would like to say something myself at this point. My concern is we have got some trustees and the civic trustees who are running the civic on our behalf. What I don't want it to be is two groups of people trying to run the civic. Because if I was on the other side of it and we come to them and say, this is what we want it to be, they could say, well, go on, get on with it then. Get on with it and do it. So I think that the idea of the meeting is for them to present something to us as to what the vision is for the future of the civic. And I'm sure there'll be time after that meeting to have a look at it and then say, well, you know, we think it's a good idea, but maybe think about this or think about that. Rather than us going in with a list of our top 10 things we want them to do. That's just my view. But Councillor Davis, you have your hand up, and then I'll come to Councillor Lyles and then Councillor Lyles.
I was just going to say, it seems like a waste of time when we're having this meeting with them to discuss the options available. If we have one voice going to the meeting, then it'd be alright to have the meeting beforehand. But all of us are going to be there, so maybe as well go in open-minded, have a discussion about where we want things. And that's the best way to do it, keeping them happy with doing things how we want it to do.
Can I suggest you send a round robin email and everybody put in their ideas that they'd like to bring forward and we could build something up between, because there's that many meetings, I meet myself coming backwards, forwards, left, right, up. I don't even know what meetings I'm supposed to be at, what meetings I'm not supposed to be at, and like, I appreciate that some people have time during the day to go to meetings, some of us don't. So if you collate an email and ask for people to put their ideas forward, then you could put that to like the trustee meeting and they could bring that as part of the civic. Because when I was in that meeting, Sarah, they were very, very, very anti-interference from the council. And I appreciate that we have funded it and therefore should have some interaction and we should keep an eye on them. But we've also made lots of changes to how it currently is run and what we're expecting them to give, and we're asking for a lot of input and information. And these people are volunteers at the end of the day. You know, they're not elected, they're just like good Samaritans. Do you know, like, there is only one person who's paid, the rest of it is just genuinely goodwill and nothing better to do.
I don't think there's anything in the way this suggestion is worded that says there's going to be any mandated decisions. It's the purpose of it is to have a discursive, open forum where people can share their ideas and have conversations with each other about the things that they are considering themselves, but those ideas might be contributed to by hearing what other people have got to say. And I take what you're saying, Joe, about, you know, putting ideas together, but that's not a discussion. That's something completely different. So for those people perhaps who would not be able to attend the meeting, absolutely send your ideas in and we can put those into the pot. And I don't think it should be, you know, that this is mandatory to come and attend this meeting. It's an offer to have a discussion amongst colleagues who have a real interest in the future of the civic, and certainly not to interfere. This is about being informed.
Thank you, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I personally I don't see a great deal of difference between the aims of Joe's round robin and Sarah's meeting. Personally, I think the meeting is a better way of doing it. But there's no reason why we can't do both.
Councillor Wilson.
I would just say the meeting on the 4th of August is for that very purpose. I just don't see the point in doing another one.
There'll be perhaps 23 of us, and how many trustees?
6.
And then, is this just a one-off meeting, or are there going to be others? Because 23 and 6 is 29, and then there'll be presumably at least one, maybe more, of the people representing the architects. A discussion with 30 people is not likely to, it's going to be a starting point, but if we've already had some ideas, then we would be a lot further along by the time we got there, wouldn't we? I don't
We're
know.
still going to have those same 23 on the 4th of August, so we're going to have that anyway.
This meeting on the 4th is making sure that we've given a good brief to the architects about what our ideas for a vision is, that we are sharing with the trustees, that, you know, we represent what we want this building to be for the benefit of the community. And that's all we're really thinking about, and have the opportunity to discuss that. It isn't compulsory that everybody has to come to the meeting, but I think sharing our ideas about how this building could be developed for the benefit of the community is a worthwhile discussion to have. And I think we certainly, it's about avoiding the chaos, Bellamy, that you, Councillor Bellamy, that you talked about, that we don't want chaos and we don't want confrontation. So to have had a discussion beforehand, it just seems helpful that we're then giving the architects a more thought through brief as to what the possibilities could be.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy.
I've lost my train of thought.
Right, okay,
Sorry,
thank you.
I might come back in a minute.
Can I just, I mean, Councillor Wilson has given us a view. Councillor Ramsby, have you got anything that you'd like to contribute at this point, since you're one of the trustees that we appoint to the civic?
Yeah. I think we're in a bit of a difficult position in that we, as a council, own the building, and it is our building. It is not the trust's building. And I think that we are duty bound to let the trust know what our view is. Now, they may see a different view, and that's fine. And I don't see the trust going, well, because you disagree with us or we disagree with you, that they are going to walk away en bloc. But I think the council is entitled to its view as to how the building may be altered in the future and what it should be doing for the community. And I take Sarah's point to sit down and have an informal discussion for an hour where we can throw ideas around amongst ourselves and actually probably throw half of those out as being totally impractical, and go to the committee, the meeting on the 14th, saying, would this be, would A, B, C, D, and B possibilities, and put those to the architect.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah. quite great, yeah, we don't want to lose sight that this building is the parish council's. But the parish council took on this building basically to save it for the community. So what we're going to say then, we're going to invite every single member of the community to put in their ideas. I still think it's, you know, we have a trust. That is the way that it was always set up in the beginning, for a trust to run, because there were no way that councillors or parish council could run it. I'm sure clerking team don't want to be running it. It's, the whole idea was that eventually that it'll keep itself. I know that, and I know that's not particularly happening at the moment. You know, it does need to wipe its own. Never mind. I won't go down that line, but yeah, it does. You know, and I'm just, you know, this, as far as I'm in agreement with what Councillor Kirby said. We will go to this meeting, we'll have this meeting with the architects and that, and then I do suspect there will be other meetings afterwards where they come back, because then they will have listened to all 23 of us and the trustees. We have got a meeting coming up, the working group with the trustees soon. We couldn't get it in early enough before this meeting because of holidays and all sorts of other stuff. And I just think we need to be careful, really, really careful, because like I said, they will.
Councillor Dixon, I think Councillor Davis, and then I'm going to call the decision to hold.
Yeah.
I think it's two opposing views on this.
I think it would be impractical to invite all the residents of the Holme Valley there. If we could invite all 23 people who represent them, their views, I think that would be quite useful. And as well, as councillors, we can go out there and seek the views of our wards and get them ideas and put them across at this meeting beforehand. And if there's going to be loads of meetings afterwards and extra meetings and stuff like that, what is the actual harm in having a meeting, getting together beforehand? What damage is it going to do? Why are some people so worried about this or threatened by this? I don't understand. I think as well there's definitely will be some people in this room who won't be there on the 4th of August because it's school holidays and things like that. So it will give them the chance to have their views beforehand, and other people who can't attend that meeting on the 4th.
Councillor Davis.
Can I say, for the meeting on the Monday, 4th of August, we have it downstairs because it's too warm in here.
It will depend on whether the usual hirers are in there. Because if they are in there, we can't have it. Sorry.
Can I propose that we do set up this informal meeting on either the 7th or the 14th, and those who want to attend do, but I think it would be beneficial to have us thought through ideas and shared our ideas beforehand. So I propose that we actually vote on whether we want that meeting.
Okay. So all those in favour? All those against? One abstention.
So having carried that motion, the nature of and arrangements for the meeting, you need to discuss.
So I think Clark gave us two options of July the 7th or the 14th, and then we need to secure a venue as well.
Can I suggest, if you remember, we had a meeting at Holme Library to have a wide-ranging discussion, sort of informal.
Brainstorm.
And I think Tom ran it, and we had a load of post-it notes, and we all put down our ideas on that, and then looked at them together and grouped them together. And by the end of it, we had come a long way. It was very productive, despite being informal. And I think that's what we're after, isn't it? Somewhere where we can all share our ideas. And I know, I appreciate totally where Councillor Ours is coming from. It's very annoying when you've got to go to work and other people haven't. I do get that. But
that wasn't what I meant though.
no, but anyway.
I am a bit good that I do have to work. That is a bit of a life thing, yeah.
But you could also have your contribution, particularly if we can collate our ideas and then circulate them to everybody, and then people who, for whatever reason, were not able to attend there, could add them in, and then we've got some sort of thought to go into the visioning exercise on Monday the 4th of August.
Anybody else wishing to comment on that? Yes.
Could I propose a venue, which is the Holme Library? Because I think there's art stuff going on here.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing is, do you want it to be a council meeting, or, you know, a formal council meeting, or are you wanting it to be an informal meeting? That's the other thing to think about.
My view was that it was an informal meeting for people to come if they so wished. You know, not mandated or anything. And I'd like to propose that it's on the 7th of July.
It wouldn't require a clock.
No.
But you'd be welcome if you wanted to.
Yeah, you
So can I suggest then, if the 7th of July has been proposed, and a venue has been proposed, who's going to arrange it? If we don't want the clerk to be involved and have to do a lot more work, who's arranging it?
I'll arrange it.
Okay.
I have a key.
You've got to let them know as well.
It's unlikely to be booked because it's a month.
Are you declaring your interest?
No, not interested. I'm not interested anymore. I have a key because I'm a friend and I live nearby.
I'm happy to do the administrative bit that sends the message out to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Moving on then, Holme Valley Parish Council Amendment to Representatives List. We've got in the agenda.
Okay, so, I think
We haven't said what time, whether it was morning, afternoon or evening for the 7th.
7 o'clock.
Oh, we had 7 o'clock. Sorry.
No,
7.
Oh, right.
If there is a problem on the library, I'll get that.
Thank you.
so. I think what it says in the agenda is self-explanatory. So Home First Forward got added to the list of organisations which wanted parish council representation in error in 2024, and therefore Home First Forward are asking if they can be taken off. And because of that, I've amended the list of councillor representatives for 2025-26. However, Home First Forward has said they would be happy to come to a parish council meeting and describe their work, or alternatively, arrangements can be made to invite 1 or 2 other parish councillors to observe the meeting. So what I am asking council to do is to note the revised list of councillor representatives as shown below, and then consider any further action with regards to councillor representation, particularly with regards to the offer made by Home First Forward to either come and speak to a meeting or have 1 or 2 other parish councillors invited to observe the meeting.
I want to ask a question. Brockhurst Village Trust, we've still got council member of them. Is he wanting to do it or not?
I've not managed to speak to him, but yeah, I will. I know it's an action for me. I've managed to catch him.
I attend the meetings, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
So.
Any other comments on that? Okay. And the point from the clerk about Home First Forward, whether or not we'd like them to come and speak to us or council go to them, council option.
I'm just thinking about it. One way or the other, it's going to involve a slot at this meeting, isn't it? Because if councillors from here go to the formal meeting, so got to report back if everybody else is going to know what they want us to know. So would it not be more direct than to come to the meeting here?
very good idea, Councillor Rushton. I think that's a very time and motion saving event.
For us, not necessarily for them.
Yeah, but we don't ask them for money, so it's fine. Donald wants to go.
Okay,
Never forgotten.
so the proposal is that we invite Holme Firth forward to one of our council meetings, full council meetings. Okay. All in agreement? Yeah. Okay, Home Valley Land Charity. It says Land Charity to report. Consider proposals from Home Valley Land Charity.
Very briefly, I can move this on. At the last land charity meeting, we agreed broad areas of expenditure. We agreed several things, but broadly we were agreed sort of broad areas for the civic and for Holme Library. There was additional money which is not resolved, and we've got ways of researching what people want to do. We are about to embark on working with the civic and with the council, we becoming they from time to time, to finalise the amounts and get the applications in process and get it moving. It's a little bit complicated. We all agreed at the aforementioned brainstorm in Holme Library that we wanted it to be a legacy project. And what we need to do next is to let the civic know the broad area of money we're thinking about, and them to say we'd like you to buy us this thing that, if need be, could be clearly attributed to us in that area of money, but specifically that way. We will then bring it to the council, or instruct the council or advise the council, because in order for us to give it, the council will need to demonstrate that it cannot simply take it out of funds. So the council will then need to put together an argument about, well, we'd have to quadruple the precept and heaven knows what to do this. So that's where we're at. So we're seeking your support to continue with that.
I propose that we wait for the update then.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, Councillor Colley, for that update. So resignation of a member of the Service Provision Committee.
That's to note, resignation of Councillor Andy Wilson to the Service Provision Committee.
Noted.
And moving the outside building to repair and renew.
Yeah, and apologies about the 3 different versions of the agenda that went out. I don't know why I managed to forget to put these referrals and service provision in, but anyway, it was right at the end in terms of what was sent out. So, at the meeting on the 9th of June, Service Provision Committee resolved to recommend the motion that you can see on the agenda. And obviously with the amount of money involved and so forth, what Service Provision Committee are looking for is approval in principle of expenditure of up to £34,475.10 for phase 1 of plans to repair the Gartside building roof, install solar panels and other tasks included in the agreed phase 1 scheme of works, including the order of priority within phase 1 as agreed by the working group. And this was debated at considerable length in the Service Provision Committee meeting.
Anybody any questions? Anybody wishing to propose? Motion? Yeah, second. Okay, all those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, any abstentions? Youth services in the Holme Valley.
It's the same thing. It's a resolution from the Service Provision Committee to recommend council approve expenditure of up to 25,000 for Kirklees Youth Alliance for the provision of youth services in the Holme Valley, to be made by one payment of £10,000 following the meeting on 9th of June 2025, and then 5,000 after each remaining Service Provision Committee meeting across the council year 2025-26.
Okay, anybody have to propose that? And a second, thank you. And all those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Referrals from the Communication and Engagement Working Group.
The assistant clerk can.
Okay. We had our first meeting of the Communications and Engagement Working Group on the 16th of June, and we've met again just briefly this evening to iron out some kind of project planning and prioritisation of the work that we want to cover. The first thing is that can we, because expenditure is now a working group rather than a committee, we need to come back to full council for approval. So we think that the next 3 to 6 months, 8,000 from the budget line, which currently has 15,000 in it, which will cover our ongoing website costs. So our renewal will be due in the next few months. I think the emails come out of that one as well, and quite a lot of the IT comes out of it. There's ongoing publicity commitments, so some of the print publications and digital publications that we put content into. There will be costs associated with the big community celebrations, such as paying for the building and some more publicity, and the first aid as well has just come through. And finally, I'm putting together an events kit so that we don't have to lug around stuff quite so much, which will include things like a folding table, a gazebo, a trolley to pull it all around in, and some of the digital and physical versions of the new branding as well. So we think that will be more than enough over the next 3 to 6 months to cover our needs.
Thank you, John. Okay.
So that will need a proposal.
We're happy for you to continue.
I need
Do you have to propose the expenditure?
Yeah.
How much is the expenditure?
8,000.
Up to 8,000.
Okay.
It's out of a total budget of 15.
Councillor Holme, you're proposing that?
I'm proposing it. It's already been approved in the budget, so
Councillor Holme, thank you. All those in favour? Okay. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you. Right, so report from Kirklees Ward Town.
Hang on,
Oh, sorry.
sorry,
Sorry,
Chair, there's another motion as well. But,
Right, sorry.
The second one is just approving the work of the Communications and Engagement working group to take forward the communications and engagement matters in line with the group's remit, which would include delegated responsibility to me to carry out most of the actions for the remainder of the council year. So that's things like following the action plan that has been put together by the working group.
Councillor Dixon.
Propose that we do that.
Okay. We've got a second. Councillor Backer. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Reports from Kirklees Ward councillors. For Kirklees councillors or parish councillors to report back on relevant activity news from Kirklees. Councillor Greaves.
Yeah, the only real thing I can think of is the changes to the bin collections. So it's, I actually think it's the rounds have to be redone. More houses, bigger vehicles, so it's about optimising the rounds. But our bin days are changing. Now, it might not seem it, but actually moving to the start of the week actually means probably a better service for residents, especially those who experience missed bin collections. So the current issue is if your bin day's Thursday, like mine is, and your bin's missed, you're not allowed to report it on the system until the bin rounds are finished for Thursday. So that's about 3 o'clock. Overtime day, catch-up day is Friday, and so those overtime rounds have already been drafted on the Monday, the Tuesday, the Wednesday and the Thursday. So you're kind of hopeful that if your bin's missed on a Thursday, that they can get you in on a Friday round. But sometimes they can't, which then means you can be waiting a long time. It could be the following Friday before you get a catch-up. Whereas if your bin's on Monday or Tuesday, there is lots of scope for them to be swinging past your house, and if not, to pick you up on the Friday. So whilst residents might not appreciate that subtle difference, from my perspective of constantly having to deal with hundreds of missed bins every month, it makes life a lot easier. The likelihood of having a catch-up collection has probably trebled. But the big bit is it's the end of this month. So everybody, please make sure you know when your new bin collection day is. So if you're there wondering why everybody else has put the bin out on Monday night and you're still thinking I'll be alright until Wednesday or Thursday, please triple check.
Can I just ask then, what happens on a bank holiday? Because a lot of bank holidays are on a Monday. aren't they?
Mine's collected on Monday and they always collect it on Monday, even if it's a bank holiday.
Okay, thank you.
So the only exception is Christmas.
Right.
So this is the point when people say like, oh, bin crew get like no end of holiday. They actually don't.
I'd like to say that Mike Oakley's been out exceptionally good. That's the only thing I do at Winter Bound is the bin men.
The downside, of course, is that we've got bigger wagons, which does make them more economically efficient. But as we all know, especially if you see, so I came through Neverthon tonight. How buses get around, I don't know how bin men do as well with the extra width and depth of them all and everything. So there is a mini refuse collector, but it's much in demand, and we really do need that.
Yeah.
And I think from the last conversation with refuse is they're trying to secure a lease on one pending the approval for a purchase of another. But it's almost a bit of, as the big wagons get bigger, we actually need more of the smaller ones to be able, and if you picture it like the bus service, we've got the mainline bus service that hurtles up and down the main road and that does what it needs to do, and then the magical mystery tour buses are the ones that weave around picking up all the bits in between, and it's almost that kind of principle that there's some houses that are a nightmare to get to with anything other than a smaller, and when I say smaller, they're still like bigger than a transit van. But the bigger the vehicles get, the more small ones we also need to offer that resilient service. And it's a strange one to say because the council does do 1,300 statutory jobs, but the one job that everybody notices, that everybody's very clear and vocal about, that's obvious and apparent, and can bring down councils is big collections.
Well, including yourself, if I may say.
I just wanted to add to what Charles has said. Apparently this new system they've been doing in North Kirklees and it's worked quite well. So that's why now it's been brought.
So we're not the training area.
We're not the practice. They've done it in North and it's worked quite well.
I wanted us to be the training area because we were absolutely certain it would succeed and that would have put us. But yeah, the big bit is that they're going to stick to their patch. Yeah. So again, there's lots of nooks and crannies to villages, and knowing how to get to a house and how not to. So the same driver, the same crews make it easy.
Yeah.
I can pretty much tell when the crew is not the regular crew, depending upon how many misses and how crazy it gets tends to correlate.
When all emails come through.
Yeah.
Councillor Dixon.
Is there any plans to expand the recycling rate and try bringing back the glass collections? It's mentioned
yes,
before.
yeah, but the big bit of that is the government previously was keen on it, but so keen that they didn't put any funding with it, forgetting obviously that councils were under pressure. So there is that bit of, there's some great ideas that can come down from government, but they do need to think through the practicalities of it. That said, Kirklees is looking at all of that, and glass collection is one of them, but the bottle banks have been a tremendous success, and the trade-off between the costs of curbside collection and the additional collection of glass is not particularly good use of money.
Scouts, like I do.
So it is one of those things of trying to figure out what's the most important bit. So
yeah,
there's lots of stuff coming down. The couple of things that Kirklees does need to get better at and will be getting better at is the breadth of what can be recycled in your green bin, and that's critical because in an ideal world it should be your green bin that's overflowing. Well, in an ideal world you'll try to reduce it, but we're seeing that load shift, and the green bin really needs to take more. So it's the balance between all of what's recyclable, but the cost and benefits of doing the recycling. So some of the after sales markets just aren't really what people think they are. So the glass collection currently is pretty much done at no cost to residents. It's a couple of private contractors who run the majority of it, so they sort that out. They take the glass and they take the profit from it, but ratepayers don't pay for it. It's a pretty good system. The flip side is, you start going back to curbside collection, you're going to need a whole load of dedicated specialist collectors. They'll collect all that glass, and then they need to sell it. Who to? These firms. So you kind of cutting them out from doing bulk collection into doing doorstep collection. You're going to have to pay them a cut for managing it all. So by the time you're finished, your net income is going to be less and your operating costs are going to be substantially higher. So within an envelope of limited council funding, ever increasing costs, and look on the other side of the council where we're looking at adult and social care costs, and demand increasing and cost per unit increasing, so you've got that double hit impact year on year. I don't think there's the room to do everything that we would want to do.
Facility for recycling glass anyway, and that gives ownership to the people who live in the area to recycle. So I think that's...
Yeah, the bigger issue for me is that in some parts people use their green bin as a second grey bin. That is the much bigger issue, and that's an issue that really needs to be nailed, because contamination rates really impact upon recycling. Contamination rates really undermine the concept of it all. So you might say, or rather I might frame it like this. What's the benefit? Lifting 80% recyclers to 85% recyclers, or lifting 0 recyclers to 50% recyclers? And actually I would have said the latter will make a far bigger difference. And on the plus side, shifting them will save a fortune on landfilling costs. So the latter would be cost effective. In fact, it'd be profitable in that it would be avoiding losses. If that makes sense.
Yeah, on the Tetra packaging, apparently they've now put bigger bins in up at tips, so it takes more because they were getting overflow.
I went again about a month ago to the one for Cumberland, and it was still full, the Tetra.
They put a bigger one in.
It's like, I don't think they've reinvented it since Christmas when we went before.
Well, apparently now they've put a bigger one in, there's been lots of complaints.
They're all still in the boot of my car and they've been there for about a month.
We should be able to get them in now because they put a bigger in.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts from Kirklees Council or anything that might be impacting the area?
If there's questions, happy to read them.
Can I just thank Councillor Greaves for that, because that was incredibly informative, and I didn't know a lot of what you just said.
Anybody else? Any other
Someone mentioned that on Thursday.
Any other points from any other councillors? No? Okay, thank you for that, that was useful. So, standing item, climate emergency. Council reminded items on this agenda should have been viewed where appropriate to advise the climate emergency the council has declared. So do we think we've achieved that? Yeah.
That's report, touched on it very well.
Okay. Do we need to propose that? Confirm that?
Unless anyone's got something to propose, then that's fine.
So finally, items for publicity.
I can tell you what I've got going on.
Yep, go on, Gemma.
I'll be doing some Holme Show stuff this week. Obviously, we'll have a presence at Holme Show on Saturday as well. So thank you very much for those of you who are coming along. I'll do some things around that, and then over the summer it will be largely looking towards the big community event and recruiting stallholders and musicians at some point very soon as well. I'm also doing a bit of work on the website around putting in a kind of local services directory, so I've been beavering away in the background. A lot of signposting to kind of other services locally that we sometimes get inquiries about. The plan long term is also to include a bit of transport, a bit of tourism and things like that in it. I'm hoping to go live with it kind of about the end of July, so watch out for that when it comes as well. But if anybody's got any suggestions, that'd be great. I've also got pending a little blog from Councillor Holmes, who's been out visiting schools. If anybody's been out and about doing community activity, not necessarily with your councillor hat on, but other community things, we can write little blogs about all the sorts of other things that you're involved with. So if you've got anything you want to do let me know. I've always got space for it.
Thank you, John. Councillor Russell?
I just asked a question. I was just catching up on it and looked at the Huddersfield Hub and I saw they had an item on the big event.
They did? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered where that had come from.
Yes,
Here.
well, it's come from me. We as part of the old case committee, we started a relationship with them, so we do pay them a little bit every month, and they have a dedicated page now for the Home Valley. So it's created a Home Valley news page within Huddersfield Hub. And they're very amiable to me, sending them stuff whenever I need it promoting.
Okay. Thank you, Donna. Anything else?
That's it from me.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I will call the meeting to a close. Thank you very much.
Well,